Hello, this is John from caveofprogramming.com, and in this tutorial we're going to look at implementing the controller bit of the model view controller architecture. Now I don't intend this to be a series of tutorials on software architecture, but I want to implement the kind of minimal architecture that I need here to make my Swing app work, even if it's not the most efficient app in the world or anything, and it doesn't do anything very interesting. I want to at least make it make sense so that you can see all the different Swing components doing something vaguely useful. So if you don't want to go into software architecture at all, then feel free to skip ahead and we'll get back to Swing components in the next lesson. So I'm going to I've got my GUI package here that's got GUI code in it. I've got my data model here, and the way a lot of software developers think of this is that the model's got to be watertight and it's got to really preserve your data, whereas the GUI could be this thing that it may even crash all the time, you know, as GUIs tend to do, who knows. But hopefully it won't do that. But the point is that the model must be very reliable and highly tested, whereas the GUI, you just want it to look nice and hopefully work most of the time. So if you've got logic, so-called business logic, that isn't obviously to do with, you know, text boxes and text areas and, you know, checkboxes and things like that, so it's not part of the view, the GUI, and it's not part of the data handling, the core data handling code, then that logic is considered part of the controller. And we may as well create a special package for it here. So I'll say new, I'll right click on source actually and say new package, and I'll just call that controller. There's nothing cast-iron about this. You wouldn't necessarily do this in a real application, although you would at the very least have a rigid demarcation between back-end model code and front-end GUI code. So in the controller, I'm actually going to create a class here, which I'll just call controller. And I'm going to give, so the mainframe is going to call controller when it wants to add stuff to the database. And I'm going to go to the mainframe here, and I'm going to give it a private controller. So the mainframe calls the controller, and the mainframe actually is a sort of controller in itself, really, because it hooks up the components and tells them what to do. But I'm going to have like an actual controller that interfaces between the database and the sort of more sort of GUI specific code. So let's yeah, I've added the import there, and let's create a controller here equals new controller like this. And now the task that I want to handle in this tutorial is that the kind of where is it, when stuff is added to the form, someone clicks the OK button, basically raises this form event which carries information about people, and at the moment it's just sort of outputting some of it in the text area, which we're going to change to a JTable shortly. And what I want to do here is I want this to actually add the data to a database, even if for the moment it's only going to be basically an array list. And to do that, I need to transform this data to stuff that could go in this person object here. So to do that, if I go to if I go back to my main frame, one thing I could do is I could have a method on controller that accepts all these different pieces of data, and then creates a person object and adds it to the database. Or I could just pass this event to the controller, really. And I think I'll do that, because although I feel that possibly having a method here that accepts all the different pieces of information might be more elegant, because it avoids referring to the form event in the controller class, just to save time. Actually, I'm just gonna give it a method here that called public void add person, and it's just going to accept a form event, call it EV. So now in my main frame, just add the import for that. And here you see I'm importing GUI stuff into my controller, and that's not so bad, but what must never happen is you must never import GUI stuff into your data model. So let's go to the main frame here, and I'm going to say here controller.add person and just pass it this event here, and let's get rid of all that stuff. It's actually E, not EV. Okay. Now in this method, the first thing to do is get all the information I need from the events. Let's say string name equals event.get name, and string occupation equals event.get occupation. And let's run the application and see what else it's got in it. It's got age, so it's an age category. So we've got an event.get age category, which returns an int. So int age cat equals. And we've got an employment category, event.get employment category, which returns the string. So string empcat equals. And we've also got a US citizen boolean. So boolean is US equals event.get. Actually, it is US citizen. And we may have a tax ID. Well, that may be set to nothing. It may be null or empty. So string tax ID equals event.get tax ID. And there's also a gender, so event.get gender, and that returns a string. So string gender equals. Now my person it has kind of different requirements for how it's constructed. So let's say person equals new person. And I'm going to have to supply a bunch of things to the constructor here. And when I've constructed the person, then I can add it to the database with this. So let's make the controller have a reference to the database. So let's say database db equals new database. There we go. And then add the import. And then I can say db.add person, and I can add the person that I've created there. So now I just need to take these and transform them to the appropriate type to supply to the person constructor. So if I put my cursor between these two round brackets in the person constructor and hit control space in Eclipse, it shows me the arguments that I need. So I need a name, occupation. Now I need an age category. So that should be, I think I can just paste in age cat there. And I've lost my autocomplete. So let's take a look at this. So age category. Oh, it's actually got it wrong. It's actually an age category enumeration. So let's say age category, and let's say switch age cat. In fact, let's call this age cat ID to make it more explicit what it is. And I can say switch age cat ID, and case 0, I can set age category to a age category dot child. If you remember, age category is this enumeration that I've got here. So I'm transforming from the integer, which the form returns, to the enumeration. And that may or may not be a necessary or good thing to do depending on your database and kind of preferences, but I'll do it here just to do something. So and case 1, set it to adult, and case 2 will set it to senior, and then I can supply age category there, and my autocomplete has helpfully come back. So let's invoke autocomplete, press F2 to give this focus, and I can scroll. Now I need employment category, so I need the same thing again, basically. Employment category, you recall on the form, people can select from one of 3 categories, or they can type stuff themselves. So let's have a variable of type employment category, emp category. And let's do, I can't do switch on a string, I don't think. So let's say if emp cat dot equals employed, then I'm going to say emp category equals employment category dot employed. Else, and then let's copy and paste this, so I can say else if it equals self-employed, then we have self-employed. Else if it equals unemployed, then this equals unemployed. And finally we've got another, which is where the user types something, his or herself. So let's say else there, it equals other, and in the case of equaling other, I'm just going to, in lieu of doing actual testing, which of course you should do, but to get this working, I'm just going to say system.air.println, and I'm going to print out the emp cat just to remind me, and just so I can see that if it is equal to other, that it's not self-employed, unemployed, or employed, just as a debugging aid there. So system.air prints kind of red text down here in the console. And now I can add emp category to this constructor, and let's take a look at what else I need in here. So I've got employment category, tax ID, US citizen, gender. So let's have here tax ID, US, let's see what I called it up here. Let's maximize the editor with Control M, and I called it is US. So let's put in here is US, true or false, and then I need gender, which again is a category thing. So let's have gender, except that I think I've already used gender up here, so let's call it gender cat, and I can say if gender dot equals male, then gender cat equals gender dot male. Let's add the import there. Yeah, okay. Else, and I shall presume that gender cat equals gender dot female, if not male. And then let's add this here. So gender cat. Okay. If I save that, I've still got an error. Age category may not have been initialized. That's because I haven't got a default case here. So let's say, let's just set that equal to null to make that quiet. Okay. So now, when I fill in a person details, then hopefully it should add it to my database, but we're not going to actually see anything happening for the moment. And what I'm going to do in the next tutorial is I'm going to change this text area to a JTable, and we're going to look at viewing the data in the database in that JTable. So join me again next time when we'll get back to looking at actual Swing components and and until then, happy coding.